Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. In today's review, we're discussing the 6th episode of the Bad Batch show, Decommissioned. If you're interested to hear my thoughts on the previous episodes, I'll drop the links in the video description below so you can follow with me and see where I'm at in the show so far. So, before we jump into it, warning alert. This is a completely spoiler review. I'm going to talk about characters, story, and so forth as I go through the synopsis of the story. You have been warned. This is a spoiler review. Please turn away now. Now, let's get into it. We are back to Ord Mantell, and the episode begins with Sid making a grand decision for the clones. She's saying, well, you are staying here, and you will do another mission, because you have no other choice. And as we get into the cantina, we see that Omega is practicing with her bowcaster, with the weapon that she finds in the previous episode. And I thought it was pretty interesting because it's reasserting that Omega is a growing part of this team. She needs to stand on her own 2 feet, prove that she's skillful, and that she's not there as just a baggage that they carry around. What's interesting here, I found that Sid also becomes to take a role in their future. From the moment that we meet Sid, it almost feels like she has some past with either fighting in the Clone Wars. She also mentioned that she had dealings with the Jedi, and I'm curious to see where they go from there. Completely unrelated to Star Wars, which also her name signifies to me personally, is that in a Final Fantasy RPG franchise, there's also a prominent character called Sid who pops up through the games, which all have individual stories, but he served as a same kind of guardian or fatherly figure who moves the party forward. And it's curious to see that here Sid almost fulfills the same function. She's directing them and she's saying, look, youngsters, I know you're skilled warriors, but you also need brains. And she's doing that for them. I also have a slight suspicion, and I don't like to guess or do guesswork or predict what's going to happen. It's more of an internal feeling. The moment that Sid encounters Omega and their little interaction exchange, how it's visually the story was handled in that moment, almost pointed out to me that she's force sensitive, because she is immediately curious about Omega, and I know we're all suspecting that she might have force abilities as well. Now she says that you need to retrieve, Sid gives him a mission. She tells you need to retrieve this droid head from these tactical droids from the Clone Wars era that has valuable information. And guess what? We're back on Corellia. For the first time that we ever got to witness that planet was obviously in the Legends books, but we also got to see a live-action version of it in the beginning of the Solo film. We saw, both in the film and this episode, the industrial sector. But it makes me wonder, are we going to go back to Corellia and explore more kind of like civilian and the grandeur of the planet, where the people dwell, architecture, that sort of thing. So I'm hooked there. So they go back to the Corellian shipyards. They go to this droid disassemblage or trash factory where things are being discarded and destroyed. And I thought the first reaction that I got visually from that scene was then when the party gets out of the ship and they see those police droids moving around. And they look exactly like those elongated cranium, like head skulls we saw in Jabba's palace. I'm like, oh, wow. So the show, once again, is tying the original trilogy plus this show and catering to us, the original fans as well, from the visual front end of things. And I really, really enjoyed it. So they go in there, and from there, things are pretty straightforward. They try to retrieve the droid. Omega, of course, tries to help. She's on the lookout, a job. And the interesting things happens, the surprise. The 2 sisters, Trace and Rafa from the Clone Wars final season 7, show up. And honestly, it wasn't a big surprise for me. It almost feels like season 7 served as a bridge between the old show and this one. And the Bad Batch is really natural continuation of the Clone Wars show. So it was expected to see 2 completely new characters introduced in the final season of the show, and it made you wonder, like, hold on a second, why are they introducing these seemingly major characters? They're weaving their plot into this story. Ahsoka has a brush with them, and and then of course we see the Bad Batch. So it made a whole lot of sense. And these two sisters are here also on this heist mission episode where they also want to retrieve the only control droid head that is available. That's where all the strategic information is at, and we don't know who their hire is. The who assigned them to that mission. As the action ensues in this episode, which I thought was completely fun, and it reminded me a lot of Attack of the Clones episode 2, where Anakin, in order to get to the to see what's going on with the droid factory, he goes through that conveyor belt, and there's a lot of fighting going on. So visually, there were a lot of similarities. And it was also cool how they were playing hot potato with the droid's head, and the two sisters are trying to get a hold of it, but they realize where they're not quite on different sides. They both want to accomplish the same thing, and as the mission progresses, they start helping each other out. Pretty cool. Especially I liked the moment where Omega gets into trouble, and one of the girls, I believe it was Trace, because we've seen more of her in a Clone Wars show. I think she's more kind of presented to the audience. I couldn't quite pick apart who it was who helps her. I think it was Trace, and she pulls Omega out. I thought it was fun that, she had a kind of like quick change of heart. And I think it's quite important that the sisters are here, and especially when we get towards the end of the episode and we see like a glimpse of somebody who is behind them, that their retrieval of this droid was directed, it almost tells me that this is the early stages of building rebel cells, because who else might need that tactical data other than employ it somehow to fight the new empire? Who is in the background? It could be Fulcrum, obviously Ahsoka, as we know. It could be Obi-Wan Kenobi as being an active member of those early rebel cells, or it could even be Bail Organa, and he's coordinating with them, and he says like, look, you're going to be more active now. This is your mission. Go ahead and do it. If you don't like Empire, do something about it. Obviously, the big deal with Wrecker. And I love that the show moves at a pretty quick pace and shows us that here's his head trauma and this is what's going to happen. They don't beat about the bush too much. We've seen the setup in the previous couple of episodes, and here they're finally addressing it. Yet again, he bangs his head, and now he hears a Crosshair's voice says, good soldiers follow orders. I thought it was appropriate time to do it. I hope they kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it and resolve the situation quickly, whether Wrecker is going to be completely decommissioned, as the episode's title suggests, or, they'll be able to discover what's wrong with them and extract those chips. Anyway, I do appreciate that whoever is controlling the pacing of the show from episode to episode, I would assume it's Filoni, he's the creator of the show. His hand is on the dial, and he knows precisely when to crank up the action and say like, okay, we had quieter moments in the previous episodes. Now let's dial it up and give this episode full just crazy action and guns blazing, and that's exactly what it does. And then when the story needs to take more prominence and the action takes a backseat, he kind of like slows it down a bit. I think it has been very dynamic throughout the first 6 episodes of the show and works really, really well. I have not been bored at any point in the show. If there's a story element, it's fun and interesting. It develops the characters and builds the world around them. And when it's time for action, it's all excitement. And once again, this episode doesn't take itself way too seriously. There are some fun moments in there. When they first encounter the sisters, one of the phrases is being repeated, and the sister says, is there an Echo in here? And an Echo says, yeah, I'm Echo. So the humor is pretty like well layered. It's in there. The show still has fun. It has obviously matured. It's a little bit darker, but it's also for kids. We want to have entertainment at the end of the day. And I felt also with these two sisters, with Trace and Rafia, obviously they're from the Clone Wars show that George Lucas wrote. That was his creation. It's pleasant to see that his hand is still very much on the show, and obviously Dave Filoni being his protege saying, look, it's still George Lucas in here. So that was fun for me to watch. The action was very, very exciting. I really enjoyed that, back and forth. The shootouts were cool. They're in this narrow passageways. The Wrecker has like fear of heights, maybe. I don't know what it was. But very, very exciting visually, and, a lot of thrills and anticipation. And I was really afraid for Omega at one point, where she's like nearly descends into that lava pit. Like, oh my God, pull her out. Very, very good tension, very good build up. And of course, the prequel music when they activate all the old school droids from Clone Era, and those start helping them because that's what they're programmed to do. Um, the Clone Wars music kicks in, and I had like once again happy vibes. Like, oh, they're bringing everything together. This show is a celebration of all Star Wars, not just one part, not just original fans or prequel fans. It encompasses all of it. And at the end, I would like to discuss what's next for the show. What do I anticipate? What I hope for? Ahsoka and Kenobi. There's no reason for them not to be here. I think they were served very important roles, purposes in the Rebels show, and I'd like to see them here. And also, we saw Leia in the Rebels show, so I think it's not far fetched to ask for young Han Solo. We came to Corellia. It's a crazy tease. That's what our notorious favorite smugglers from. Please bring him in. Give him a kind of side mission that maybe is not directly involved with the Bad Batch, but is parallel to it. Kind of like they did also with Lando, who was also featured in the Rebels show. Give him kind of like a storyline that crosses pathways with the clones, and that would be something I would be interested to see. And the final thought is Omega. We see her being trained in this episode, but obviously times need to pass in order for her to become a powerful warrior, because she's a child in this show. Just like Anakin in episode 1, Phantom Menace, he's a kid. He has a potential, but there's a 10-year lapse of time, and we see him as a 19-year-old in Attack of the Clones, and now he's a capable warrior. Same with Omega, so I'm wondering what's going to happen. My personal choice would be stretch the show, because if the show is this good, I would like to see more of it. I'm greedy like that. Extend it for another 7 seasons if you have to. But if not, if some of the rumors surrounding the show that's going to be very limited, like 3 seasons tops, then I assume there will be some kind of breaking, and time will elapse, and we'll see older version of the Bad Batch, and Omega will be this young, capable woman, perhaps force sensitive. So these are my thoughts for this episode. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Great action, great humor. The story doesn't stay still in one place. It keeps going. We have some curious moments with Sid, who shows like she had some kind of military background, or she knows how to handle herself. So there's a lot of sweet stuff to anticipate and look forward to in the future. Once again, my name is Ben. I do Star Wars comic book and book reviews, character highlights, lore videos. If you find this information fun, please subscribe to my channel, hit that bell button, and I'll see you next time.